Back to Fast Market here on the Schwab Network. It's time for our cash tag segment. For that, let's bring in our next guest. That's going to be Andy Swan. He's a co-founder at Likefolio. Welcome back to the show, Andy.
Thank you.
All right, so we're talking booze. It's been a really choppy couple of years for Constellation Brands. It seems like their beer segment's doing well, but I think they just had to take a big charge for their wine and spirits side of their business. Is that the problem with this stock, and do you have any data that leverages this one going into earnings?
Yeah, you nailed it. That's the problem with this stock. It's also the positive with this stock. You know, we kind of think of Constellation Brands as almost the store of value of the stock market, because it seems like no matter what's happening in the economy, they have something going very well, something that's not going very well. You know, their portfolio and their diversification is both their strongest suit and their Achilles heel. And in this case, wine and spirits is clearly falling significantly behind the competition. There's also macroeconomic influences on that, but the beer side is doing very well. And, you know, when we look at consumer brand interest for beers and beer brands, the one thing that sticks out over the last year, 18 months, is the absolute destruction of Bud Light, the fumbling of the ball that Bud Light did. And where those pieces fell to the rest of the market is pretty clear. You know, a lot of those people went to Coors, which is not owned by Constellation Brands, owned by its own company, ticker symbol TAP. But Modelo and Pacifico continued to accelerate their gains as the top beer brands in the country, and that's only accelerating at this point as the whole Bud Light phenomenon continues to hang over the market, and these competitors continue to split up market share. And so I think the big takeaway for me is that Constellation Brands kind of is what it is. It is an enormous portfolio of a lot of different wine, spirits, and beer brands. And generally speaking, when one of those segments is doing well, the other one probably isn't. And that's the case right now. Wines are down, beers are up. They're in a good spot long term. They'll continue to grow with the overall market, but I don't see outperformance on the horizon anytime soon.
Andy, I mean, this is the master's thesis in having a large portfolio. Some things are working, some things are not. They're still showing revenue growth. They're still showing margin improvements, but it's all beer. It's not, and wine is struggling. Tom mentioned the write-off that they took. They do have a fair amount of debt. $10.6 billion in debt. That's a little more than analysts think they should have based on their cash. But the question, Andy, is beer enough? There it is. Can beer carry these guys along as wine continues to struggle? Because Modelo, Corona, Pacifico, those are three top-tier brands. Modelo is extremely popular. Pacifico is kind of a sleeper in terms of popularity, but they're doing extremely well. It's just how long can they do it with wine not helping?
Yeah, it really reminds me of the Yum Brands portfolio back in the days when it was, you know, Taco Bell holding up the rest of their brands. It was KFC and Pizza Hut falling behind, and Taco Bell would hold them up. I think the same thing's happening here. It's pretty natural, I think, for the beer brands to be doing well in a tougher economic environment, in an inflation-charged economic environment. It's pretty natural for people to say, you know what, I think I'm going to skip the $30 bottle of wine tonight. Let's grab a six-pack of Modelo. I think that is the natural reaction that the consumer is going to have. So I actually think of it as a positive that Constellation Brands has been able to weather this economic storm with relatively little damage to their market cap or to their stock, and put themselves in a position that when things do turn and people do turn back to those higher margin items in the spirits and wine section, that they can take advantage of that, and that they've maintained their shelf space and distribution or expanded it in the meantime. So I think it's really a positive story for Constellation Brands. They've had 57 consecutive quarters of growth in the beer segment. So I think we can confidently continue to bet on that side of the business while, patiently waiting for the macro environment to change and the tailwind to shift to a tailwind on the more profitable side.
Yeah, this industry as a whole, Andy, is finicky. A few years ago, it was all the seltzers and everything else. Boston beer was rallying to all-time highs. Then it's been crushed the last couple of years. Is that what being an investor or a trader of names like this, is this what you have to be prepared for in these names? Because it's going to be a choppy trade. They typically don't, continue to rise or rally over longer periods of time.
No, yeah, you're absolutely right. I think it's short bursts. I think it's when everything aligns, which is rare when you have an extremely diversified portfolio, then things can be really good. And when things aren't going really well from a macro standpoint, you're playing defense through your diversification. I think that's exactly what's going on with Constellation Brands. And you just have to be patient as an investor and wait for those legs up and hope that in the meantime you can stay sideways.
Andy, one last thing. Tom mentioned the seltzer business. Is that hanging in there? Because I have young kids in that age demographic, and man, I still buy a lot of that stuff. Is their growth continuing? Is it stalled? Are they stable? Do you have any data on that, or just opinions in general?
Yeah, I think stable would be a generous way to put it. I think stalled is probably the better word. Beer is growing. The seltzers had their moment. I think they've fallen back and stabilized at a level that will stay pretty consistent into the future. The seltzer drinkers are the seltzer drinkers. There's really not a whole lot of new ones coming into the market.
High Noon still continue to do well.
But that's not more of the seltzer. That's more of the booze infused with stuff. I think.
Is that a different sector?
As opposed to like Trulies and all that.
I don't know what I'm buying. I just buy what they tell me.
Oh, boy. I hope they're of age. Let's put it that way.
Whoa!
All right, Andy, great stuff. Great data as always. Have a good day.